welcome to Let's Talk About Brand. I, of course, am your host, Christine Gritman. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether you are joining us on the Adweek Podcast Network or if you're joining us right here on YouTube. Wherever you're joining us, make sure to hit subscribe, and I will make sure to do my utmost in the next half hour to make sure that you know that that was an excellent decision. I'm here every single week talking about branding, of course. I'm interviewing smart guest experts about different elements that impact branding, especially personal branding. And today, you are in luck, friends. Today, I have a guest who is the self-described smartest man in the world, which is a pretty impressive title if you ask me. Pretty confident personal branding there. But I think that regardless of your feelings on that claim, I don't think anyone could dispute that he is certainly one of the internet's most creative men, for sure. He is the CMO and creative director of the Idea Integration Company, and he is personally an expert on word-of-mouth marketing. So without any further ado, let's bring him on. Welcome, Saul Colt!
Yeah.
So good to have you here, and I had to wear my red glasses, of course, even though I know that's your jam, but I don't think anyone's gonna mistake us for each other, so I think we're all good.
Well, we have similar features, but
and we like red curtains, all good. Now, we
yeah.
actually first met at Inbound 2018, I believe. You interviewed me outside the convention center, and ever since then, I have just... One of the things that really stood out to me is I love your logo, your personal logo for your personal brand, which is basically the red glasses and your facial hair and your hair. And I think that that's just the epitome of simplicity and design, because you know immediately who it is with the fewest possible elements. That's a solid brand you got there, Saul.
Well, thank you. It's been through many different we'll call it versions over the last 20 years. But you know, it's so important to have a very, very recognizable brand, especially now more than ever. You know, we're not working in offices anymore. You know, it sort of feels like the loudest voice wins, whether they're right or not. And especially when it comes from, if you're working in a big company, if you've been lucky enough not to have been laid off over the last few months.
Yeah.
You know, when you're not in the office, it is so important to, one, talk about yourself and make sure people know you're still around and what you're up to. But it's also so important to be memorable, and because like forgettable is like career suicide now.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to dive in later to the fact that you have such a strong personal brand, but you also run an agency. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about the thing that you have embraced the most, it seems, as a part of your personal brand, besides the red glasses, which is word of mouth marketing. And that's so interesting. I feel like I don't hear people saying that term enough because, I mean, when you think about it, before we had marketing, that's what we had. We had word of mouth. That's kind of all you had. Now, of course, we have a million things. We have social media. We have web advertisements. We have out of home. We have mobile messaging. We have all sorts of different ways to get the word out. So I would love to hear from you. What do you feel is the place of word of mouth in today's marketing scene?
Well, it's still one of the most valuable tools that a brand can employ. The problem is that it's not sexy like growth hacking or some of these new terms and new platforms. But there's been hundreds of studies over the last decade that shows that the number one way to, well, not number one, but if I get a referral from someone I know, like, and trust, KLT, there's a 75% chance that I'll actually follow through. So you and I know each other. We're not best friends, but we know each other a little bit. If you were to say to me, Saul, you travel a lot. I'm going to Chicago next weekend. Do you know any good restaurants? And I gave you 2 or 3 restaurants. There's a pretty good chance you'll, at the very least, look them up and decide if they're for you. if someone who just walked up to you and you didn't know, you had no relation with them, and they just overheard the conversation, and you said, "Oh, you have to try this restaurant." Maybe you do it, maybe you don't. It's very similar with online reviews and a lot of things. If you don't trust the person, you don't know the person. Like when you think of celebrities, we know celebrities. We probably don't trust them because we know they're getting paid to do it. And, maybe we like them or we don't like them. But the greatest thing is still getting a true referral from someone you like and trust. And brands have sort of forgotten that and dropped it to a lower priority. But again, so many studies show that what is the name of the company? I'll remember after. But a huge consulting firm proved that 62% of all referrals come from someone that they come in the real world. So the place that real referrals and real sales are happening are in the line at the grocery store. They're at your kids' soccer games. The internet and social media actually converts very poorly when it comes to referrals, as opposed to something in the real world. So something we've done for the last decade is not only institute programs to create these conversations, but we create stunts and spectacles to get people talking. And, our goal with every project is to get someone to turn to someone else and say, "You'll never believe what I saw today." And then they talk about, this brand did this or this brand did that. So instead of a lot of brands who start the conversation online, we do things that get the conversation started by real people and people who care about your brand. And then we use all the social media tactics and digital marketing tactics to spread the message. But we're never the one that actually starts it ourselves. We start a lot of things in the real world, because the real world is still the most powerful place for branding and conversations.
And you used my favorite 3 words: know, like, trust. I keep telling Bob Berg that I'm going to get those words tattooed on my body. He advised me against it. It's going to happen one of these days.
It's amazing how few people even know the term and believe in it, but it's the basis of everything.
And what I love about what you said is that it really shows that, just like I said, word of mouth marketing happened before marketing. Word of mouth
Mhm.
marketing happened before the concept of influencer marketing became such an overinflated buzzword. So I would
Mhm.
love to dive in a little bit more as to the difference between word of mouth marketing and influencer marketing, because it definitely sounds like there is one.
Yeah, so there's definitely a place in marketing for influencers. I'm a fan of influencer marketing, but I feel like a lot of companies do it wrong. Everybody's so focused on numbers. We want the person with 100,000 or 200,000 or 1 million followers, when what people should really be looking for is that person who has a very engaged community that is very similar to your customer base or your community that you're trying to hunt. So the difference between word of mouth is, a trusted referral from a friend or a trusted recommendation. And influencer marketing is really kind of, we'll call it sexy spamming. That, maybe I coined a new term, who knows. But it's people who have an audience, but they're not necessarily a targeted audience. And when you talk about know, like, and trust, I'm going to trust and know and like my best friend. But if Kim Kardashian or whatever influencer, celebrity influencer, or mommy blogger, or any tennis influencer, whatever that person is, um, that one, they're getting paid for it. So they probably can't trust them fully. And that in 72 hours or maybe a week later, they're going to be promoting something else, because that's just the sort of the wheel that they're on. And no shame to them. They figured out how to make a living by being popular. Good for them. That's actually really impressive. But from a brand standpoint, I'd rather find the person with 900. I believe much stronger in micro influencers than major influencers. If I could find somebody with 2,000 followers and their engagement is just through the roof, and those 2,000 followers are so into whatever their specialty is, whether it be stamp collecting or sewing or whatever, instead of the person with 100,000 followers who are just scattered all different, likes and dislikes and hobbies and things, you're probably going to get around the same engagement from the person with the smaller numbers but the highly targeted numbers. And it's shiny and sexy to have a recognizable person, but there's so many great micro influencers that one will cost you a lot less, probably deliver the same results, and they'll become super loyal to you. So they probably won't just do another ad in a week. And another way of using influencers is make your own influencers. So if you find people that really love your product, champion them and use your audience to elevate them. So in turn, they'll elevate you in return. And again, those people are going to stay forever because they're probably already really real customers. They already really like your product, and they're going to speak in a very different way than someone who just every 72 hours is holding up a new product and saying, "I can't live without this."
Absolutely. And you already answered part of this next question, which is about creating your own influencers, seeing who's already engaging with your brand, engaging in those relevant spaces, and championing them, or really making it that direction, which is really nice. But what are some other ways to kind of find who has that micro level of trust? Because the thing with a Kim Kardashian or another type of big influencer with a huge number of followers is, yeah, they're more generic, but they're also really easy to find. I mean, just try not to find them. So how
Mhm.
do you find these people who have genuine trust with people who actually know them or feel like they know them, like them, and
Yeah.
trust them?
So I just want to circle back to one thing you said when you talk about, and I don't want you to feel like I'm picking on Kim Kardashian. I actually think what she's
Oh, she's
accomplished is
crying all the way to the
incredible.
bank. It's all good.
Yeah.
She doesn't watch the
Uh,
show.
okay, no problem. But someone like her, or these massive influencers, they don't actually have influence. They have audience. And so there's lots of ways to buy audience. If you really want influence, there's it takes a lot more work. And unfortunately, a little bit of hard work sometimes deters a lot of people. But you find the people who are already talking about you. You find the people who are subject matter experts in the thing that you're all about. Go to conferences, find out who's speaking on these things. Um, you know, piggyback on associations and anywhere that you can actually find, sort of these undiscovered gems, however you want to describe them. It does take a little work. And that's why there's been a ton of platforms that say they bubble up influencers to the top and things. And of course, the most famous one was Clout, which I don't believe exists anymore. But the problem with AI influence or discovering influencers through platforms is that influence needs context. So I'm extremely influential with, women between 35 and 45, but that's a joke, by the way. But I'm not
I mean, you're
influential.
influential to me,
Yeah,
and I'm in that
yeah,
demographic. I
yeah.
squares with me.
But I'm not influential with construction workers or lawyers or dentists because I don't speak that language and I have no area expertise. So, you need the context around influence to make it work. Whereas clout would just go by popularity and noise and all these things and say this person's a 90, so or 100%. There was a time where when Charlie Sheen was going crazy with all that tiger blood and stuff, according to Cloud, he was the most influential person in the world, but nobody would want him promoting a product or a service during that period of time because it just was unreliable and borderline crazy, allegedly. So
Well, I mean, you can look
that
at what's
always
going
had
on
it.
with Kanye West right now. I mean, it's similar.
Yeah.
is his name everywhere. If you look by quantity, not quality, if you're just putting it into a machine, you're seeing a bajillion mentions, and it's not really taking the context or the quality of those mentions
Mhm.
into account.
Exactly. So to find those stars, whatever we want to call them, I always try to work with find people who are already using your product, customers, people who have a bit of an influence and are talking about it already, and then sort of build from there. And it's always about talking to people and having them connect dots and make introductions. One of the things I always do when I'm brought in to any new company is I send a survey out to the entire customer base when I'm allowed to. And, I ask pointed questions. Who do you follow? Who do you admire? What events do you go to? What magazines do you read? What blogs do you read? And, we try to create a bit of a fact sheet around, what these people care about, because honestly, you know, you know, all it matters or all it should matter to the brand is who's important to my customer base. And a lot of times I get, I've been let go of projects and fired from projects because I maybe aren't I am not the best at communicating what's in my brain. But sometimes I'm fighting with the decision makers saying it doesn't matter what you want or what you like. It's what the end user wants. You're not your customer. You don't live the life of your customer, but everybody wants to, have their fingerprints on it or their stamp or there's a cover your ass sort of necessity. But it should only be about the end user and who they care about, who they follow, and who they admire, and that's how you figure out who you should be spending money with.
And that's how you figure out who you want talking about you. One thing
Mm,
that you mentioned earlier before we got on the influencer conversation was the idea of creating these real life events and doing activations that get people talking. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because that's something like I feel is an undertapped resource. It probably wouldn't work as well if everyone were doing it. So it's a really
mhm.
interesting thing to me, and I'm also curious as to how you make sure that the right mouths are going to be in that audience. The people who you want talking about you are going to be the ones who are going to experience this and pass it along to others.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of events, big or small. Everything that's good that's ever happened in my career has come from being in the right room at the right time and having a great conversation. Some early victories in my career was I got the CEO who I was working for at the time a cover story in Entrepreneur Magazine, just because I was in the room with a bunch of entrepreneur writers and I was charming and sort of convinced them why they should go for it and stuff like that. So everything that's ever great that's happened to me has been just in real life, and that's why perhaps I'm a little bit biased and really believe in these things. But it's like every time I get on an airplane, I will buy 5 or 6 people dinner in whatever city I'm going to, and I'll just reach out to either friends I currently have or people I feel like I should already be speaking to. And it's so important about building a network as far as creating events for other people and brands. Um, how do you ensure that the right people are in the room and the right people are speaking for you and to you? You always start with your own customer base, and I think people for some reason don't lean on their customers as much as they should and can. I feel like they're afraid that the bond is fragile or something like that. But I always start with the customer base. When I talked about the surveys I sent out earlier, I'm giving away trade secrets here, but I one of the ways I identify people who are super fans are anyone who fills out the survey probably cares enough about the brand to put them in a super fan category. Anyone who opened the email but didn't fill out the survey is at least curious, so they go in a category below. And anyone who didn't open the email, I'll still try to reach out and meet them, but I'm going to focus my time and energy on the people who care enough about the brand to take 10 minutes to fill out a survey and share things. So if I hit the whole customer base, I put them in three categories, and it's sort of like 70-20-10. The great people get 70% of my attention. The next group of people gets 20% of my attention, and the last group gets 10% of my attention, because there's no way of knowing that they're not a super fan just because they didn't open the email or something like that. But you just got to keep being like methodical and keep having conversations and keep reach out, and it's a lot of social listening. It's a lot of a little bit of sleuthing and looking at people's websites and LinkedIn profiles, and it can sound creepy, but it's not really. And it's really about establishing people. And the other thing is giving them the tools they need to actually talk about a product, or giving them the tools they need to talk about whatever it is that your goal is. Because, no one is ever going to talk about you if you don't give them something to talk about. And that's why we always start with stunts and spectacles, because that's something people get really excited about and talk. But, you know, people love to share and love to talk, but they don't know where to start and they don't have the tools. So it's always about giving them the tools and getting them started properly.
Speaking of knowing where to start, you have mentioned, these stunts and spectacles and activations and stuff. So I'd like to, it's kind of a two-parter here. One of them is I'd love to hear examples of some of the stuff that you've done for brands that was just an effort to get people talking. And then secondarily, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you have leveraged real life events to move your own personal brand forward in ways that were especially meaningful. But let's start with the brand activations. Let's start with what you've done for them, because it's probably a little bit different, right?
Yeah, no. So we really pride ourselves on being non-traditional marketing agency, and really doing the things that other people don't have the guts to do, or stuff like that. So we were the first people to ever use clouds to advertise a cloud-based software product. We did skywriting in San Francisco to get attention for Zero.com. We did it over top of San Francisco's baseball stadium during a baseball game, which was nationally televised. So our skywriting got on television and made the news. We'll say it broke Instagram for 3-4 minutes. And it didn't really break it, but we were the trending topic for 3-4 minutes.
You were the Kim Kardashians of the sky.
Yes.
You broke the internet.
Yeah, like we've done stunts where we've recreated Evel Knievel's jump over school buses, where it was, just to get people's attention. The school buses were all branded with, our client and promo codes and offers and hashtags and all sorts of stuff like that. We've done, cross country tours where we've driven from Los Angeles to New York City, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with every customer along our way, and creating, I think I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was about 50 brand videos for them, where we basically shot brand videos, edited them in our SUV while we were driving to the next city, and delivered like a 24-hour turnaround to a bunch of deserving brands that didn't really have like high quality or high production value brand videos and explainer videos and things like that. So we've done like a number of sort of crazy things. We've done a bunch of digital stuff too, but it's like we really, really love using the real world to create that digital sort of excitement, and then go from there. And as far as using events for myself, I talked about the dinners. I've self-financed and done 4 or 5 speaking tours where I'll go to 10 different cities and sort of spread my message and spread my love, as some people would say. But every time I do that, we do dinners, we do all sorts of events, invite all sorts of media, and it's always a big production because it's like I said, it's so important to be visible, to be top of mind. I've personally, I decided a long time ago that I wanted to be the best in the world at an incredibly narrow skill set. So I want to be the only person you think of when you think of what I need, what I can provide you. So, I don't want to get calls for SEO, and I don't want to get calls for pay-per-click marketing and things like that. So to keep being relevant 14, 15 years into my career, it is all about never shutting off. It is all about being everywhere. It is all about being top of mind. But that's no different than what everybody should be doing with their career. And it's no different than what everybody should be doing with their corporate brand. We live in a very noisy time right now, and it's noisier than it's ever been. So the way that you stay relevant, the way you break through the noise is to, one, do things that no one's ever seen before, and two, do stuff like all the time, over and over and over, because you have no clue who's going to see what and when. And even when there's crickets and you don't think anybody's looking at it, it's amazing where I'll walk the floor of a conference and someone will say, I saw your post on this, and it makes you feel good because it got, like 3 likes and 1 share, but people are seeing it, and maybe it's a little too edgy for them to want to put their name on it, or the humor was a little too much for a lot of people, but they're still seeing it, they're remembering it, maybe it gives them a smile. So social media is a very unreliable way to measure success.
That actually brings me to my final question, and the one that is surely on people's minds when they hear word of mouth marketing, which is, how can you measure the success of something like that?
So it's not as direct as having a click or a button, but a lot of the things that I initiate when I work with people is I ask them to add a "How did you hear about us?" button in a sign up process. There was a 1 year when I worked with a company where 62% of all sales were tracked back to stuff we did, just over and over and over through the "How did you hear about us?" You use promo codes, you use unique URLs. It's not that different than anything else, but it is a little fuzzier than usual. But like when you're talking with people, you have to ask them questions and figure out a thing. Like I've gotten pretty good at measuring what we do because I want to ask for more business or more money or whatever. But again, it's not as direct as if you have a tracking code or something like that.
But again, it comes back to that human touch, which you've been saying all
Mhm.
along, which is making sure that you are actually having conversations with people, you're seeing people live, you're asking them
Yeah.
where they heard about things, which is it sounds like the absolute key to all of
Yeah.
this.
I don't remember who said it. For some reason, I think it's Jay Bear. I know it's not my quote. But he says, when we talk about personalization, the word person is right in there, and we sometimes forget that they're people. And when we talk about customers, the word custom is right in there. It's so interesting that so few people actually take a human approach to this stuff and treat people like they're valuable, and not just a number or a barcode or whatever. And it's a shame because the companies that do treat customers exceptionally are always the ones that win, and they're always the ones that stick around for a long time.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Saul. This was fantastic. Let everyone know where they can and should find you and what they'll find there.
Sure. So you can find me just about anywhere on the internet at Saul Colt, all one word, SAULCOLT. Or you can go to my agency website, theideaintegration.com, where you'll find, we're experts in word of mouth, stunts, spectacles, branding. We just launched a program. Well, we're launching it tomorrow, but depending on when this goes, we'll assume that it's launched. So you guys are getting a scoop, but we're just launching a series of idea boot camps where we'll actually come into your office, teach you what we know, or The second version of that is you can give us a problem and our team will come in and solve the problem for you. So if you're not looking for a full campaign or you're not looking for something, we'll just put our completely different style of thinking towards your brand or problem and come up with solutions for you.
Love that, because of course the key to getting people talking is to do something different. Well, thank you so much,
Yep.
Saul. It was a pleasure to talk with you again. I look forward to when we cross paths again at some other real life event, which I'm a huge fan of as well.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on the show.
And I appreciate all of you who are listening, who are watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm coming at you every single week, interviewing smart guest experts about particular elements of branding, especially personal branding. Thanks so much. Bye. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About Brand, part of the Adweek Podcast Network and Acast Creator Network. This podcast was produced by Christine Gritman, executive produced by Al Manarino and John Heil, and edited by Christine Gritman. You can listen and subscribe to all of Adweek's podcasts by visiting adweek.com/podcasts. Stay updated on all things Adweek Podcast Network by following us on Twitter at Adweek Podcasts. And if you have a question or suggestion for the show, send us an email at podcast@adweek.com.